12 leadership tips for building strong team loyalty coming up. Have you ever seen a successful team that didn't have team loyalty amongst all of the teammates? Or maybe they didn't have loyalty to their leadership team or their coaching staff if it's in sports? And more importantly, have you ever seen a successful team where the leadership team themselves weren't loyal to each other? Maybe the coaching staff is divided. I've personally experienced that in sports where maybe some of the coaches were against other coaches, maybe offensive coaches were divided with defensive coaches, and those were never successful teams. So you have to have team loyalty from the top down. Let's talk about 12 tips on how you can build team loyalty as a leader for your team. Tip number one, as a leader, it's key that you're loyal to your leadership team first and foremost. And that doesn't mean you're not loyal to your direct team. It just means your loyalty needs to lie with the leadership team first and foremost, because everything goes top down. If you're not loyal to the leadership team, then you're going to have a hard time building loyalty within your team because there's going to be division there. So even though you may lead a team within a greater organization and you're on that team, you're also on the leadership team as a whole. So your loyalty needs to start there. That way, when initiatives are discussed amongst the leadership team, you're able to push those down to your team and ensure that your team understands those things and can be loyal to the overall mission of the organization. That's going to build loyalty within your team and also with your company and your brand as a whole. Tip number two, as a leader, is to make sure that you understand the why behind any change in the organization so that you can positively explain that to your team. And this goes back to being loyal to the leadership team. If you're loyal to the leadership team, when a change is announced or talked about or something new is coming up, you need to really get to the core of why that's being done and really who that's going to benefit within the organization. Sometimes there's a change that occurs that may be difficult on your team directly, but it saves time for all these other teams in the organization. And so you need to understand the why so that you can positively explain that to your team. I've found that people are willing to go through some amount of pain and suffering if it means it's helping other people. And so if they understand that this change may be a little bit more difficult for their processes, but it benefits all these other teams and other people, they're going to understand the reasoning behind it. They're going to stand behind it. And this is going to build loyalty within your organization. Tip number three, as a leader, is you need to make sure that you speak up to the leadership team when something happens in terms of change or idea of change or new products or new services, if you feel that there could be a better way. And that's important because if you're providing your feedback and ultimately helping the team as a leadership team come to the best decisions, you're going to be confident in those decisions. You're going to therefore be able to sell those to your team, which then builds organizational loyalty within your team. It also helps your team to be in the best position for success, because if there's a change that's coming down the pipe and you know that it could be a little bit different to further benefit your team and the rest of the organization, you need to be able to speak up so that ultimately you are making the company, helping them make the best decisions, and then your team is understanding those decisions are really what's best for them and the organization, which is going to build loyalty within the team to you as a leader. Tip number four is that as a leader of your team, you need to build a culture of we before me. You need to build a culture where those people in your team don't have a selfish mindset. They have a mindset of being servants to each other, helping each other, and really doing whatever it takes for the better of the team and not themselves. If you build a culture like that, you're going to have great team loyalty because there's a bond there. Everybody's helping each other. Teams that don't have that just have individuals trying to perform well for themselves and not really to the benefit of others, have a hard time building team loyalty. Tip number five for building team loyalty is make sure that your team has a cause or a mission or a goal that they stand behind. And make sure that you talk about that often. Why are you doing what you do? How does it make the world a better place? Get your team to understand what that mission is and how they play a part in that so that they can get behind it. Ultimately, your team is going to have more loyalty if they all are aligned on what the mission of the team is and understand what that is and take pride in achieving that. Tip number six, as a leader, to build team loyalty, you have to be present and you have to lead by example. If you're leading by example, if you're working hard, if you're serving others, if you're talking about the mission, if you're passionate about the mission, then your team is going to be as well. And that's going to build loyalty to you as a leader and loyalty within the team. If you're not present, if you're not working that hard, then it's going to be very hard for the team to be loyal to you. And if they're not loyal to you, they're not going to be loyal to each other. Tip number 7 for leaders to build loyalty is they have to treat everybody fairly. That's really important, because if the team feels like you're treating other people differently, maybe so-and-so is kind of your friend after hours kind of a deal, and so you let them get by with a few things, and somebody else, you don't let them play by the same rules, that's going to be a huge problem. You're not going to have any kind of loyalty within your team. So you need to make sure that you treat every single person within your team 100% fairly, hold them all accountable, hold them to the same standards. It's going to build loyalty throughout your team. Tip number 8, to build loyalty as a leader, you have to give people real-time feedback. Hold them accountable. Hold them accountable to their goals, everybody, evenly. Make sure everybody understands their roles and how they play a part in the team's success, and speak to that. And if they start falling short, make sure to give them that real-time feedback. Give them open and honest feedback and ask them to do the same for you. This environment of open communication is going to build loyalty within your team. And by just being able to do these things and doing these things, it shows that you care. Ultimately, people don't really like to be held accountable all that much, but what I found is people really don't like to hold people accountable. That's the toughest thing of all. So just take that initiative and be that leader that does that. People will start to hold each other accountable by doing so. The team will become more successful. And if people are holding people accountable within the team, it just shows everybody that they care, because there's nothing worse than nobody ever saying anything, right? That's when you start to feel like, I don't know if anybody even cares whether I do good or bad or whatever. So make sure that you build a culture of open communication and honest communication. Tip number 9 as a leader is to make sure that you congratulate and acknowledge and constantly encourage people, always. Always be doing this. Find people doing something good and say something about it. If you're constantly encouraging people all the time, then when you do have some constructive criticism, they're going to listen to it. But if all they ever hear is constructive criticism or negative things, then they're going to grow numb to it, and it's going to be a negative thing. So constantly encourage them, highlight the good things. They will start to then do that with their teammates as well. And when you build a culture of positive reinforcement like this, you're just going to build more team loyalty. Tip number 10, to build strong loyalty, set high goals. People like to strive to be great, so set high standards and high goals, and don't be afraid of missing them. It reminds me of that quote by Vince Lombardi that was something like, always strive for perfection, knowing full well that you'll never achieve it, but in the process, you achieve excellence. And your team ultimately wants to be excellent. And by doing so and working together as a team to achieve these high goals, you're going to see that it builds loyalty within your team. Tip number 11, as a leader to build loyalty, take accountability when you fall short, and ultimately embrace struggle and challenge within the team, and be transparent about those things. I've found throughout the years that the tough times are the times that build the strongest bond. I call that a trauma bond. If you go through a very tough time together with a group of people, you ultimately have a bond, right, that can never be changed or never be shaken. So by going through these tough patches, even if you're not successful, just working through them, that's going to build bond and loyalty within your team. When years have passed and you're hanging out at the bar talking about old times, you're not going to talk about the great things that you did all the time. You're probably going to remember the times of struggle. And you're going to look back and you're going to talk about it, and you're going to laugh about it when you look back. Those are the things that build bonds. So embrace struggle. Be transparent about it. Tell your team when there's a big challenge that you have to overcome. The team will rally together, become more loyal, and try to overcome that challenge. Tip number 12, last tip, is don't be afraid of losing people. You're still going to lose people even if you have a loyal team. It's just natural. People change in life. They get married, they move, things happen, and so you're going to lose some people here and there. But by constantly building future leaders within your organization, you're building for the future. And so if you do end up losing somebody, you just fill them right in with somebody that's just as talented. By building leaders in your company for the future, you also build loyalty within your team, and your team is going to be confident that they'll be successful even if they do lose a key player. So that's it. Thanks for watching. Hopefully these 12 tips will give you some ideas on how you can maybe improve and build a stronger, loyal team within your organization. If you have other tips that I didn't mention here, please leave them in the comments. Like the video if you like it, share it with your friends, and follow us for more content like this down the road. Happy marketing.